pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. The other day I opened a couple boxes of books and nobody seemed to mind. In fact, the response was rather enthusiastic. So I thought I'd first open a bottle of wine and then open a couple more boxes of books. What could possibly go wrong? Box number 1. Paula Kokoza's How to Be Human. Came out last year, I believe. This was an exchange of books that I did with the lovely Kendra Winchester, 2017. She sent me a lovely card. And I traded this for Johannesburg by Fiona Melrose, which I didn't care for, despite having loved Fiona Melrose's debut. And I knew that Kendra was interested in it, so I exchanged this with her. And I'm not sure about it. I'm certainly going to give it a try someday, but it's about a woman who comes home from work one day and there's a magnificent fox on her lawn, and they start to have a conversation. Now that kind of thing really worked for me in The Portable Veblen by Elizabeth Mackenzie, so I'm not going to dismiss it out of hand. And that's a fabulous cover, isn't it? This was a Christmas present from my mum last year. Canadian writer Will Ferguson's novel, The Shoe on the Roof. Kind of forgot about it, so I'm glad to be opening this box and remembering. I hauled it then, so I won't say too much about it, but it's a med whose research project involves befriending 3 homeless men who each believe they are God. I'm not sure about that. I read and loved Will Ferguson's travel memoir about Japan, Hitching Rides with Buddha. It's one of the best books I've ever read about Japan. I read this at the end of last year, Ma'am Darling, 99 Glimpses of Princess Margaret by Craig Brown. I gave it a pretty enthusiastic review, and you know what? This one isn't aging well, or I'm becoming more woke, but the more I think back on it, it's really bugging me how sexist it was. It was really terrible that way, and I was so busy geeking out, having a princess hissy fit over all the gossip of Princess Margaret that I didn't really realize. So I might have to do a second review of this someday. But still, entertaining. Like Water for Chocolate. Laura Esquivel. I don't know if I'll ever read it, but it was kind of a hand-me-down from my good friend here in Tokyo. Electra. Hi, Electra. She didn't want to read it, or she didn't like it, and she gave it to me, so we'll see who I might pass it down to. Welcome to Lagos by Chibundo Unuzo. This one started out great. Loved the cover. And I bailed because it just got really schlocky, and it really disappointed me. It gets so twee in the middle in what had been a really realistic, gripping plot about a bunch of ragtag Nigerians in Lagos, and then it just became a Disney movie. Ugh. I have wanted to read this forever. A Short History of Tractors in Ukrainian by Marina Lewicka. Someday I will. And I did read this, I believe it was last year, Penelope Gilliatt's A State of Change. In fact, I think I was already on BookTube, and so I didn't do a separate review, but I did talk about it. I really enjoyed it. It was a weird hodgepodge of a novel. Penelope Gilliatt wrote for the New Yorker for years, and she's most famous for having written the screenplay of Sunday, Bloody Sunday, with a foreword by Ali Smith. Yeah, some wonderful writing. It didn't quite hang together as a novel, but there was enough of it that I really loved that I think it was a 4-star read for me. It's from this intriguing little publishing house, Capuchin Classics, that reprints out of print, I guess, British novels. This is the only one of theirs I have, but I quite enjoyed it. I hauled this before. This is a historical gay American novel printed in 1919. Bertram Cope's Son. About a young English professor at a middle Western university, and there's some gay scandal. I think Ollie Bliss and I should buddy read this sometime. What do you think? Or anybody else? I believe Doris at Aldi Books is buddy reading this as we speak, or as I speak. Mikhail Bulgakov's Master and Margarita. I studied this at university and loved it. I don't remember anything about it except that I loved it. And I got this gorgeous 50th anniversary Penguin Classic edition because of the cover and the deckled edges, people. Gotta love the deckled edges. Someday I'll read it again. On the basis of having loved the Gustav Sonata, I've been collecting Rose Tremaine novels and have got a half dozen of them. I got to get to them. This is one of them, and I hauled it recently. The Way I Found Her. It's about a precocious 13-year-old, American, British, probably British boy spending time in the summer in Paris with his mother. That one description doesn't grab me so far, but I really enjoyed the one Rose Tremaine novel that I've read. This is a gay novel, What I Did Wrong by John Weir. He is most well known to the degree that anybody alive today remembers him for his, I believe it was his debut, The Irreversible Decline of Eddie Socket. I presume if I reread The Irreversible Decline of Eddie Socket today, I would think it was awful, the writing, but I read it at just the right time, and it really affected me. And there's one scene I can remember of two maybe teenage boys making out in the front of a car, or maybe in the truck, and I think it's winter, and their down jackets are making a rustly sound as they embrace, and I've never forgotten that. This is maybe the only other novel he's written, because The Irreversible Decline of Eddie Socket was published in the 80s. And this one, 2006. So yeah, but 25 years difference. 25 years later. I bought it, haven't read it. I did a page 112 exchange with Ollie Bliss, and he liked that page. So he and I have a kind of a standing date to buddy read it, and I think we've both kind of forgotten. Little Korean novel, A Man by Hwang Soon-won. I hauled it quite recently. I don't want to spend too much time going over everything. Same with Wallace Stegner. All the little live things. I haven't read any Wallace Stegner. I've got a couple kicking around here. Want to get to them. This is a novel from Denmark from the latter half of the 19th century. Marie Gruby by Jens Peter Jacobsen. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing Gruby right, but Marie Gruby. And she was... Oh, it was published in 1917. He died in 1885. Jacobsen was the founder of the naturalist movement in Danish literature and part of the cap modern, cap break, cap through, the modern breakthrough. What the heck is that? I believe Mary Grube was a historical personage in Danish history, but I can't remember what she was, a painter or I've forgotten. I researched it when I did my book haul, but I've forgotten now. The last one in the first box is David Golder by Irene Nemirovsky. She's most famous for Suite Française, and this is another one. An elderly Jewish businessman who has sold his soul. And here is the second box of books I'm going to show you. That's a heavy mother. An Anita Bruckner novel titled The Debut. I don't think it was her debut. I have yet to read anything by her. I have her Booker-winning Hotel du Lac, which I will probably try first, but my instinct tells me I'm not going to get along with Anita Bruckner, but I would like to try. Penelope Lively, How It All Began. I hauled this one maybe 6 months ago. A woman is mugged and breaks her hip. Never read any Penelope Lively. Sherman Alexie's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. I heard so much good stuff about this and kind of put off doing it because I don't get along with YA 99.99% of the time. But people urged me, you have to try it, you have to try it. And in light of the recent controversy, being honest about my emotions, I don't think I could read him. So I should probably get rid of this. I won't watch the Cosby Show reruns, and I wouldn't read a Sherman Alexie. That's just the way I am. This one I got because it was one of Eric Carl Anderson's top reads of 2017. Dear Friend from My Life, I Write to You in Your Life by Yian Li. It's a collection of essays. It's kind of a memoir about her battle with suicidal depression. It's supposed to be highly literary and wonderful. I have a feeling I'm going to get to this one quite soon. This one, another book from China, Jinran, The Good Women of China. I've talked about this at least twice, so I'm just going to give it in one sentence. It's a memoir of Jinran having hosted a radio phone-in talk show in China in like the 1980s or 1990s by and for Chinese women, which sounds amazing. So, another Rose Tremaine, Evangelistus Fan. This one is set in Regency London. Oh no, these are short stories. Historical fiction ranging from Regency London to the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. This one, Lewis Grassic Gibbon, Sunset Song, the Scottish novel from about 1922, I want to say. Or was that when it was set? Scottish novel, first published in 1932. I featured this on a page 112 tag with the wonderful Leanne of Literary Pretensions. I'm sorry, Leanne, I've blanked on your channel name, but she did the reading of the page 112, and I think there might be a read-along coming soon, but I'll let you know later. But I can't wait to read this. Mary Queen of Scots biography, My Heart is My Own by John Guy. I don't want to lose sight of this one. This was a new release last year, maybe late last year. State of Emergency by Jeremy Thien. And this is a Malaysian novel. And I bet you guys don't even have it over there. Has anybody outside Asia seen this at a bookstore? It has a wonderful page 112. I remember when I bought it, and I'm going to put it aside to use for a page 112 tag, and I need to read this. Oh. And there's green on the cover. Do you know why I'm noticing that? A Scottish novel, Doherty. Is that the right pronunciation, would you say, for a Scottish name? Doherty by William McIlvenney. I got this for like $2 at a used bookstore in Tokyo. Mel, if you're watching, would you like to buddy read it? I know you're into Scottish stuff. Published in 1975. It's about a poor man in a small Scottish town. I'm here for that. Why do I still have this? The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I don't think I'm going to read it. And I'm embarrassed to own a movie tie-in edition, but I really want to read this novel, Jane Smiley, 1,000 Acres. I just ordered her 13 Ways of Looking at the Novel after Britta recommended it on her channel last week. So I'll probably read that before I read this, but I want to read this. Another farm novel. Canadian novel won the Governor General's Award last year. We'll All Be Burnt in Our Beds Some Night by Joel Thomas Hines. The more I reflect on the blurb on the back and stuff, I don't think I want to read it, but I should try it, especially since it's got deckled edges. But it's about a young man, scrappy, 3-time loser. He's awaiting trial for an assault charge involving his girlfriend, facing 3 to 5 years in a maximum security prison. But his girlfriend, gets killed in an accident. The charges against him are dropped. That doesn't necessarily make sense, but whatever. And he goes on a hitchhiking journey across Canada to spread her ashes. And it's a journey of redemption. Now, it could be wonderful, and apparently the jurors of the Governor General's Award thought so. But I also think it could be just awful. I should try it. And here's the Marmite book of 2017, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness by Arundhati Roy. I read it last year. It was my first standalone review, which was really not the novel to choose for my first standalone review. It's terrible, disjointed, timid review of a very intimidating book. But I absolutely loved it, this novel, in a 5-star way, even though I can see what most of its readers decry as its flaws. It was just a gorgeous piece of writing, and I did it on audio and text, so narrated by Arundhati Roy herself, so every word she spoke in my ear as I read this book, and that was magical. The Quiet American by Graham Greene. I believe I studied this in my modern British literature course in the 80s, but I don't remember if I read it or not. It's obviously not about the current occupant of the White House. This is a gay novel, Guapa, 2016 I want to say, The author is Salim Haddad, and he was born in Kuwait City in 1983 to a Lebanese-Palestinian father and an Iraqi-German mother. How fabulous is that? And this is a love story set in the Arab Spring, I want to say. Set in an unnamed Arab country. Heard really good things. I've heard mixed things, but I think this is a book. I'm glad to be reminded of it. I think it's going to be one that I might like. Oh, I was just talking about Anita Bruckner. There is her Hotel du Lac. Soviet Milk by Nora Ikstina, Latvian novel, just published this year by Pirine Press in translation. I didn't love it, but I got a lot out of it. I had a lot to say about it, and I was pretty scathing about the things that I didn't like, but I'm still glad I read it. And most people who read it like it far better than I did. Japanese memoir. I've talked about it a couple times on my channel. By the time I read out the title, I'll have used all the time I have available in this video to talk about it. Horses, horses. In the end, the light remains pure. A tale that begins with Fukushima by Hideo Furukawa, a Japanese novelist. Most of his novels haven't been translated, but this is his memoir about the tsunami, 2011. I loved it. I've tried 2 of his novels since then and bailed on both of them, but I absolutely loved this memoir. And he's making a road trip. He lived in Tokyo by the time of the earthquake and the tsunami, but his hometown was in Fukushima, so he takes a road trip with some of his friends to go up and survey the damage. And suddenly one of the main characters from one of his novels manifests in the back seat and starts talking to him. And that sounds so hokey, but it really worked, and it made me want to read that novel, but that one hasn't been translated. But yeah, this was a really quirky, unforgettable novel. He incorporates the history of horses in Japan, and it's a really anti-racist. There's so much racism in Japan that doesn't ever get talked about, and he talks about it in a really historically and literarily fascinating way. I can't recommend. It's just such a readable memoir, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Even if you've tried, like I have, his novels and didn't like them, please consider giving this a try. It's on Scribd. I first read it as an ebook on Scribd, and then I loved it so much that I paid pretty big bucks to get the softcover. I think I paid about $30 for this little softcover, just to have it. Mary Poppins, I just talked about it a couple weeks ago. I don't really do well rereading my favorite childhood books, but I will try this someday, because I absolutely loved Mary Poppins. For my birthday this year, I got volume 1 of the collected short stories of Roald Dahl from my cousin Lindsay, and I still haven't cracked it, but I've got it. Also hauled this year a Chinese novel, Three Sisters by Feiyu, which I'm very curious to read about as kind of a intertext, read it alongside my memories of the Makioka sisters. They were 4 sisters, but anyway. Originally published in 2003 in Chinese. The last one in this box is the Granta edition, the Granta volume about Canada. And it was co-edited by Madeleine Thien, who wrote Do Not Say We Have Nothing, my favorite novel of all time, and also by Catherine Leroux, who's a Quebecois writer that I have yet to read. And there are submissions by Margaret Atwood, Dion Brand, Douglas Copeland, Anash Irani, Daphne Marlett, Lisa Moore, and so on. And I have not cracked it. All right, so those are 2 more boxes. I thought it was rather well behaved, and I don't think I sweared once. Maybe I should have had a couple more glasses of wine before I pressed record. Anyway, I hope there was stuff here that was of interest. Thanks for watching.